Hello, Namaste, good morning everyone. Welcome to all of you for the session on speech sound production, anatomy of vocal tract by Ms. Anitha Guru, an Erasmus scholar from the Aarhus University, Denmark, and also she is part of the Masters in European Studies program at Manipal Center for European Studies, MAHE, Manipal. This is the second time that she is delivering this lecture. Last year, she had delivered the lecture offline in the campus when she was a faculty at Melaka Manipal Medical College, and students had enjoyed this session a lot. So this session will be part of phonetics, articulatory phonetics. So it would be ideal. There are two things. One is the linguistic aspect and another one is the biological aspect. So it would be nice if we could understand the human anatomy from an anatomy specialist who has been teaching in health sciences for almost or more than a decade, who has a career as a faculty in anatomy for more than a decade. So we are grateful that Anitha, my good old friend, has once again accepted a humble invitation and presenting her thoughts on speech sound production, anatomy of vocal tract. The Mahabhashya of Patanjali, that is great commentary on Panini's Ashtadhyayi, 8 chapters on Indian linguistics, Sanskrit linguistics. Patanjali says, Yekaha Shabdaha Samyak Jnataha Sushtu Prayuktaha Swarge Loke Kamaduk Bhavati. It has a literal meaning and also it has a metaphorical meaning. So the metaphorical meaning goes this way. One Shabda. What is Shabda? We will see. One Shabda, well known or well realized or well cognized, Samyak Jnataha, Sushtu Prayuktaha, well uttered, well pronounced. That individual in this life, the language is going to be greatly beneficiary for that individual for understanding Shabda very well and also pronouncing it very well, either in this life or in next life. That is going to milk all the desires that one wishes for. It's a metaphorical phrase. Now here, Shabda is what? So the Indian linguists and the Sanskrit linguists and Sanskrit philosophers of language have identified Shabda in multiple components. One, it as a character, Varna, and that Varna has two aspects. The aspect of conversational language, spoken language, which is the fundamental unit of that spoken language, is speech sound, dhvani. Another is written letter, that is lipi. That is a fundamental unit of written language or textual language. So the language has two phases, spoken language and written language. The activities that are associated with spoken language are listening and speaking. One listens and then they imitate, they speak. And the aspects of activities that are related to written language are one writes and another reads what is written. Now in both these phases, the two units of language that are speech sound, dhvani, and written letter, lipi, both make up varna, character of a language, which you also might consider as alphabet or any other in any language. Not just this is varna, not just this is Shabda, this varna is Shabda. There is also pada, padam, the word, the morphic entity. This is also considered as Shabda. But many of the Indian philosophers unanimously agree that Vakyam Shabda, Aptavakyam Shabda, Nirdoshaha Shabdaha Agamaha. Shabda means Vakya. Shabda means sentence, verbal phrase, nominal phrase. Shabda means syntax. So the understanding that we get out of Shabda is called Shabda. It is the meaning of the sentence, the meaning of the discourse, which also paves a discussion, paves way for a discussion on discourse analysis or hermeneutics, which is also part of linguistic studies. So there is a lot of concepts that revolve around the idea of Shabda. And one of the fundamental units of that Shabda is called Dhvani or speech sound. It is not speech, it's not sound, it is speech sound. These distinctions are very well demarcated by the linguists. And as a language scientist, as a linguist, we have to be extremely careful in the choice of words and terms referring to certain meaning or concepts. We have to be extremely cautious about what term refers to what concept, rather than taking language for granted. This is what Patanjali meant by well known, well understood, and well pronounced. So we can't take language for a ride. Similarly, we can't even take the birth of a language, the birth of the speech sound, that in Sanskrit text, mostly phonetics or articulatory phonetics is not discussed in great detail. What is discussed is aspects or foundations of phonetics in the sense of phonology or phonemics, the study of phoneme. There is a difference between phonology and phonetics, or phonemics and phonetics. Now, this session would help us to understand what is speech sound and how do we produce speech sounds, how they are distinct in nature from any other forms of sounds, and what all organs or internal structures of our oral cavity and nasal cavity and all that we make use of, and the muscles and tissues and other, how do we make use of to create sound? Even now I am speaking, I'm using a lot of things to make these sounds, and I'm aware of how to use, though I don't pay attention while I'm using them. Anatomy is a very interesting subject, and Anitha and I, we end up having more than 1 hour or many. It vanished. Sorry. Many a times we end up having hour-long conversations on that topic. I once again welcome Ms. Anitha Guru for this lecture organized by the Department of Philosophy for the students of BA Foreign Languages and Intercultural Studies who study language studies and intercultural cultural studies, BA French and German, and also Spanish at the Department of Languages of the Faculty of Liberal Arts, MAHE, Manipal. So I once again extend a cordial welcome to Anitha, and also I welcome all the students of the all the FLIS students, BA-FLIS students, and also the Philograds, the Department of Philosophy students who are present here, and my colleagues and others. Once again, welcome you all. I now request Swathi to introduce Anitha.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Swathi, and I'm the Office Admin of the Department of Philosophy and the Department of Languages at MAHE, Manipal. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce Ms. Anitha Guru, who is an Erasmus Plus scholar and presently pursuing her master's in Aarhus University, Denmark, as a part of her European Studies program offered at Manipal Center for European Studies, MAHE, Manipal. and also holds a master's in medical anatomy from Kasturba Medical College, Faculty of Health Science, MAHE, Manipal, and has a decade of teaching experience in medical sciences. Being a part of many reputed groups such as INDIPEN and ASI, her areas of interest lies in histology, interprofessional education network, and medical humanities. She has also been part of many university initiatives like Manipal Universal Press and others. I'm happy that she accepted our invitation to conduct the session. Thank you, and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Swathi, and thank you, Srini. Can I see the class once at least, because it feels very weird to be just looking at my own face on the screen. Is it possible so that I can just say hi and know who I'm talking to today? Okay. Arjuna, I can only see you. Oh my God, why are they all sitting so far? Okay, hi guys. I can't hear them. Okay. Arjuna, can you unmute them? Yeah. Hi, I can understand if you have to sit behind when the teacher is physically present there. So now it's kind of evident that irrespective of where the teacher is, whether in the class or online, everyone wants to sit behind. Okay. Although I cannot make out your faces because, yeah, of course, I mean, probably I'll get to interact with you guys sometime when I come back. I would really prefer, honestly, I would really prefer in-person classes, but this is an opportunity I didn't want to pass of having to go back to teaching anatomy sometime somewhere, and this is what I aim at in the future too, to be teaching anatomy and bringing together culture and languages also. So thank you, Srini, and thank you, Swathi, for introducing me, and first of all, for having me over and giving me this chance to interact with your students. So I think I'll start straight away because I'm joining through two screens, so I'll just be switching off my video for a while, and so that I can share the screen. I hope that will be okay. Yeah. Can you confirm if you can see the screen? Are you able to see whatever I wrote?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gautama. All right. I don't want this to be like a one-way lecture kind of thing, and I would really appreciate if the students can respond. Is that okay, Srini and Gautama? I mean, I would really prefer I would like to hear them answer. Otherwise, I'll just be hearing my own voice. Is that possible for them to respond? Can I keep asking questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. All right. So what do you understand by phonetics? I mean, today, we are here for a class on vocal tract, and where do you think phonetics fits in when we're talking about vocal tract? Anyone can just respond to that? And I'm afraid you'll have to be a little loud.
Okay.
You can hear, you can hear, right? Are you able to hear me clearly? Yeah, perfect. I know ma'am and everything. Okay, just Anitha, yeah? I just go by my first name. Yeah.
Okay, myself Shobya, and I'm a first year student of BA-FLIS.
Okay.
Okay, so phonetics related to, may I know the question again?
Okay. All right. So we are here to talk about the vocal tract, and I just want to know how you see phonetics fitting into the vocal tract. Where do you think phonetics fits in with the vocal tract?
Okay, the way the vocal tract has placed is advantageous in terms of phonetics, as in the way it's placed in the inside the neck in the anatomy. You can produce different kinds of sounds. Like I mean, it has it's against the drawback as in the digestion has a problem. But the way the sounds which we produce, it's efficiently placed. That's why the vocal tract comes in place.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's all about phonetics is about speech sounds, like as Srini emphasized, and like Shivpriya, right? Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. So as Shivpriya mentioned, and it is about sounds. I mean, you have we call it vocal. I mean, any sound that comes out, it comes out through our vocal tract and vocal areas, and that's what we're going to be studying today. So before I proceed, just a few things. In case you have any questions, you can just stop me anytime. You can tell Srini or Arjuna who are there to stop immediately and clarify the doubts then and there. We have enough time. I think we have 2 hours, and I'll go as slow as possible. And at any point you're not getting something, please feel free to stop me and ask at any point. And if you can't hear, don't just sit back, just let me know. Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about phonetics, we have specifically related to speech sounds. Yeah, not just any sound, speech sounds. Now, we cannot call what animal sounds as phonetics, right? We cannot, and I'm assuming that you know that how we are different, very, very different in terms of evolution of speech, evolution of sound from quadrupeds. Can anyone tell me how you think we are very different from quadrupeds, which is one of the main factors that distinguishes the sound production in quadrupeds and bipeds? Bipeds are us, quadrupeds are the other animals. Can anyone tell me that? Hello? Not sure?
Can you repeat once again the question?
Okay, my question was, when we talk about phonetics, we talk about speech sounds specifically, right? So I cannot attribute to the sounds made by animals as phonetics, right? But in terms of animal sounds and human sounds, speech sounds, there's a clear distinction. And in terms of evolution, do you know what is that factor that brings about this basic change, basic difference between animal sounds and human sounds? What allows us to specialize, to modify, to make so many speech sounds, such refined speech sounds? I gave a clue earlier that there are others, animals are quadrupeds, and we are bipeds. We walk on 2 limbs, and others walk on 4.
Is it the evolution?
Okay, which aspect of evolution? How does it influence sound production or sound modification or transformation?
Yes, introduce yourself.
I'm Tanya. I'm a first year of BA-FLIS. Is it the larynx dropping down for human beings? Not for the animals. It's like a straight way back down.
Hi, Anitha. So Tanya I heard, you heard her?
I heard Tanya and I heard larynx dropping down in humans, but I'm sorry, I couldn't catch the rest of it.
Oh, that's what she said.
But that's okay. That's all right. It's in a way, it's right. It is in a way the larynx, the specialization of larynx, the way it is constructed. We'll see a little later as to how specialized it is. But one of the most important factors is when animals are walking on their four limbs, the rhythm of breathing is as per the walk of the four limbs. But whereas for humans, we walk on two, we are bipeds, and the rhythm is much longer. This allows humans to articulate speech much more efficiently, because when breathing, you have to remember one thing when it comes to speech. Can you, that when we inhale, we take in air, when we exhale, we breathe out air, right? And speech always happens when we are breathing out, yeah? Are you able to hear me? Suddenly I saw the video is gone. Yeah? Hello?
It will be back in a minute.
Okay,
we
but
are
you can
able to
hear
hear
me,
you.
right?
You may please continue.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
I'll
yes.
continue. All right. Yeah. So always remember that when we are, whenever it comes to speech, it is always during exhalation. Let's do a quick exercise. I want all of you to take a deep breath, and then that is inhale and then exhale. All right. And try to make a sound when you are inhaling, a speech sound. Say a letter or something when you are inhaling. Hi, I think I lost you guys for a bit. I don't know why I was thrown out of the meeting. Somebody doesn't want me to be in the meeting. Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Yes,
Hi.
yes, Anitha. We
Okay.
can hear you.
Yeah, all right. Okay. All right, so let's get back to our exercise. So where were we? Yeah, did everyone take a deep breath? I hope you were not holding your breath till now. I want everyone to take a deep breath, inhale, and then exhale. But as you inhale, I want you to tell your name out. As you inhale, try telling your name out. Can you all do that? I can't hear anyone. I think there's no audio. Yeah. Are you guys doing that? Try to inhale, and as you inhale, try to speak your name. And then as you exhale, try to speak your name. I mean, you can just do it out loud. Did you try? I can't hear, so I don't know. This is the disadvantage of distance and online sessions, but yeah, we'll make do with that. Were you able to tell your name when you were inhaling? No, right? So always remember that speech happens when you exhale. And oh, I can hear my own voice. Hello? Yep. Okay, I think.
Hello.
All right, so. Yeah, I could hear my own voice echo, so I was wondering if there was some audio issue.
Is it better now? Sorry.
Yeah, perfect. I think it's perfect. All right. So, so speech always happens when you exhale. Only when you're exhaling, you can talk. you can make sounds when you inhale, but then you can't talk, you can't speak. Always remember, almost when we are talking continuously, like example, let's say we are orating something or we are reading something out loud, out of 90% of the time you are exhaling, and you only take short breaths. That is, you inhale in short breaths, but most of the time you are exhaling. That is because the air comes out. So that is why this concept of exhaling coincides with our walking. Always remember, the breathing is in the same rhythm as our walking. And because we are bipeds, we can exhale for longer, unlike the quadrupeds. All right. So the walking is related to breathing. That is, lung function is very related to our walking style. All right. So that is why, because walking style allows us to take longer strides, or probably does not demand as much as the quadrupeds, you have a much longer exhale period. And because of the longer exhale period, with evolution, we are able to produce much more sophisticated sounds. All right. So now let's go to phonetics. All right. So phonetics is basically the study of the production and perception of speech sounds. Now we know that it is a branch of linguistics. Linguistics has many other branches. One of them is phonetics. All right. It is also the study of the human's ability to make and hear sounds. Okay. And when we say sounds here, remember, it is always with regard to speech. All right. So now for phonetics, there are 3 branches. Yeah. If you feel free to write it down, but what I'm planning to do is, like, whatever I write down, whatever I do in this, I'll convert it into a PDF and I'll mail it to the department and they'll share it with you. So you don't have to like take down every single word of it, but if you want to, you're most welcome to do that. Okay, there are 3 branches of this. Now, what are these 3 branches? Now, before we go into the 3 branches, I would like to discuss what are the components of speech. Now, for a component of speech, there should be a source of origin and there should be a source of reception, right? Now, let's say this is our source of origin, point of origin. I've lost touch with anatomy after 2 years of not teaching, so please excuse the weird looking alien creatures, but they're supposed to be humans, okay? Okay. All right, so can you make out mouth, nose, and ear? That's the most important thing. The rest we can skip. Yes? Okay, perfect. Okay, now let's say this is point A and this here is point B, okay? So when we talk about speech, so we have someone talking over here, okay? Now this is transmitted, all right? And it reaches here, all right? So you have a point of origin and you have a medium here, and the sound traveling here, and then the reaching point or the reception. So now at the first point, we call this as where it is produced, it is articulatory phonetics, okay? And the second point here is, acoustic. And the third one here, any guesses? It is very good, auditory. Okay, we have three branches, what we call as articulatory, acoustic, and auditory. All right. So articulatory is basically, articulatory phonetics is nothing but how sound is produced. Okay, the production of sound. How is sound produced? Acoustic is mainly with, regard to transmission. Okay, and auditory, here we won't just say reception, but we say how the sound is perceived. Okay, Now, when we say perceived, perception, it is not just hearing or listening to the sound. That is not just reception at the ear. Okay, even in the ear, you have two things. You have the work that is done by the ear, and then the work done by the brain. Okay, when it comes to the ear, there are three parts of the ear the sound travels. You have the external ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. And from basically the sound travels from external to middle, middle to inner, and from inner ear it goes out to the brain. Okay, any doubts still here? Okay, all right. Just one more thing. My parents didn't name me ma'am. They named me Anitha. It is a very simple name, very easy. Even the Danes can pronounce it. Yeah, so just call me Anitha. Or if you don't want to say anything, just say no, but please don't use ma'am. Okay, it sounds very weird to hear it now. Okay, all right. So once again, so auditory, when we talk about perception, please remember it is not just that the sound reaches the ear, but also beyond the ear, where in the ear you have the external, middle, and the inner ear. And from the inner ear, you have these things called as auditory nerves, which will carry the sound from in electrical signal, in the form of electrical signals, they carry it to the brain. And in the brain, you have different centers called as auditory areas. Okay, now these are the auditory areas which are present in the brain. So if I, let's say, sorry. Okay, this is the human brain. Okay. And here, this part which I'm trying to shade is the auditory areas. Okay. Now, apart from this, there is one more area which is of importance to us. That is here. This is basically the speech area. Okay. Now, when you have the sound that has originated here, that is articulatory phonetics, that is the sound originated here, it got transmitted, that was acoustic, and then you have auditory phonetics where it is perceived. When it is being perceived, remember that it first reaches the ear. In the ear, you have the external ear, it goes to the middle ear, and then to the internal ear, and then it reaches the brain. In the brain, where does it specifically go to? It goes to the auditory areas. And from these auditory areas, you have the information which then is relayed again to the speech area. Remember always that we only speak when we hear something, when there is a stimulus. The stimulus can be in the form of a thought or an idea internally also, but most of the times speech is in response to auditory stimulus. Okay, so once there is information that reaches the auditory area, and from there it goes to the speech area, and thus completing a full circuit. Okay, so that is when we say perception is complete. Okay, so once again, phonetics has three branches. It has articulatory phonetics, acoustic phonetics, and auditory phonetics. So today we'll mainly be concentrating on the articulatory phonetics. All right. So let's start with articulatory phonetics. The word itself says articulatory. Articulate means to make, okay, to produce or to change, to transform. Okay, so articulatory phonetics is basically deals with the sound that is generated in the larynx and above, what we call as the vocal tract. Now, before I go into that, I would like to briefly touch upon how our vocal tract looks. Okay. Do you know what I'm drawing right now? Are you able to guess? Yes, very good. All right. Oops. What is this? Okay, so basically we have, just to let you know so that there's no confusion, we have the nose here. Okay, is it clearly visible to all? Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, you have the nose, then you have the oral cavity over here. Okay, and we have the nasal cavity here. Okay, and here we have the palate. Are you all familiar with the word palate? Yeah, palate in the sense, not in terms of taste. Yeah, that is there, yes. But anatomically, palate is nothing but the part that is present above your tongue. So if you press your tongue upwards, if you touch your tongue to the top part, that is the roof of your oral cavity, you can feel something hard up there, and that is the palate. Okay, now that hard part is specifically the hard palate, because in the posterior part it is the soft palate. Okay, and here we have the tongue. Okay, and here we have the teeth. Okay, and here we have the lips. Okay, all right, and what else? Then we have to draw one more structure here. Okay, now you have the oral nasal cavity also that comes down like this. There is an opening. Now this whole part over here, there is another color. The blue area, blue line traces the pharynx. Okay, you need to know the difference between two structures. This is the pharynx. All right, and down below here, you have the, what is this? This is the larynx. Okay, so the larynx is only a very short part, whereas the pharynx is the part that is behind the nasal cavity, behind the oral cavity, and behind the larynx. But larynx is just this small part. Now, how do I distinguish larynx? That is, this is the beginning of the vocal tract. All right, can you see this part over here, which is projecting like a pin? All right, this is called as the epiglottis. Okay, we will read about a sound called as the glottal sounds, and that one comes in this area, that is the epiglottis. So whatever is below this is the larynx, and out here we have the two vocal cords. Okay, so you have the two vocal cords. Now this part is, which is what we call, the green line is what we call as the windpipe, and the blue line is what we call as the, any guess? Absolutely right, it is the food pipe. And always remember, when you eat, when you're swallowing, okay, so this area, can you see this part? I'll highlight this in a different color. This area is common to the food and the windpipe. All right, so if I have to trace the windpipe, how is it coming? Sorry, the windpipe is like this. Okay, so this area is common, this area, this entire region is common to the yellow circle areas is common to the food and the windpipes, right? So that is why they say either you can eat or you can talk. All right, because what happens is, whenever we are eating, this part, this glottis closes, this part closes. All right, so you can't breathe And when we don't breathe, we don't talk. All right. But if, let's say, we decide to talk when we are eating, what happens is the glottis opens and there is every chance that the food enters this area. And that is why sometimes we end up choking. Simple as that. Okay. So is this anatomy clear? Where the nasal cavity is, where the oral cavity is, where is the tongue? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You know where the vocal cords are? Okay. Now, I'll use another diagram. I'll quickly draw one more because that one got a little messy. Yeah. Okay. So you can identify the structures here, right? So I'm not going to label all the cavities and all of that, but few things I would like to label here so that we can understand the structures a little more better. So you have the palate. Okay. And remember, we have the hard palate and we have the soft palate. Okay. And this region here, we call it as the velum. Okay. All right. And then we have the tongue, which is important. Okay. And then we have, of course, I forgot to draw the teeth. This is the teeth. And that is also very, very important. We have, sorry. We have the teeth. We have the lips. We have the tongue, teeth, and the lips. And yes, and one more important thing over here, we have the alveolar ridge. I know it's a little complicated name. Alveoli means pockets, all right, small pockets like this. Okay. Now, these alveoli are present even in our lungs. Okay. The one thing that COVID-19 is affecting is it attacks is the alveoli. Okay, so you can remember that way, it's the alveoli. Now, a similar alveoli is present even in our jaw. Okay, this is here our lower jaw and this here is our upper jaw. Okay, now these alveoli are the ones that hold our teeth. So that's why we call it as a alveolar ridge. Okay, now why these structures are important, slowly we'll understand as we proceed. Okay, so and then of course we have the cords. Okay, so and we have the epiglottis. Now it is important to remember these structures very clearly. You should know where the epiglottis is, where the velum is, or if you just know the soft palate also, it's fine. Where the alveolar ridge is, where the teeth are, lips, and the tongue. Okay, always remember here we have the vocal cords, and anything beyond the larynx is the trachea. That is the windpipe. Okay, so here what we have is the vocal tract. Just above the trachea, you have the trachea continuing to the larynx in this area here. And I'm just going to do a dotted line, and it goes either the vocal tract can follow either oral cavity way or it can follow the nasal cavity way, depending on what sound we are going to produce. Okay. All right. Now, before going further with articulatory phonetics, there are few things you need to know about speech mechanism. Okay. There are 4 processes in this speech mechanism. Okay. One is the airstream process. Airstream process, I think I'll just switch on the video here. Okay. One is, can you all see me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So now airstream process is basically when we inhale or exhale, you can feel your chest move, right? And sometimes you can even feel your abdomen move. That depends on whether we are doing abdominal breathing or chest breathing, or what we call as thoracic breathing. Okay, sometimes they tell, you know, to breathe through your stomach, breathe through your stomach. Let me tell you, stomach has nothing to do with breathing. It's just a layman misnomer. Okay, It is something to do with your abdomen as a whole, as the entire cavity, and stomach is just one small part of it. Okay. So now airstream process is when the air is going to come outwards, that is from the thorax. Air never comes out of the abdomen. It's just that at the top of the abdomen, if I have to draw a human body here, roughly. Okay, so here we have the head, we have the neck, and we have the limbs. Okay, we have the upper limbs and we have the lower limbs. Okay, in this area with what we call as the trunk, we have the thorax, and then we have the abdomen, and we have the pelvis. Okay, separating the abdomen and the pelvis, there is a very, very important structure. What is that? That is called as the diaphragm. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this before. You have heard of it? Perfect. Very happy to know that. Yeah, this is the diaphragm. Now, diaphragm is very, very, very important for breathing. All right, very important. It's the movement, the upward and downward movement of the diaphragm is what causes us to inhale and exhale. Okay, so when we take a deep breath, the diaphragm is actually going downwards. All right, and thus it is increasing the size of the thoracic cavity. Okay, that is the thorax where the lungs are situated. Okay, so now this airstream process is basically governed by this muscle called as the diaphragm. So now for speech, one of the first process will be the airstream process, from where you have the air being pushed outwards from the lungs upwards to the neck. Okay, next is the phonation process. The phonation process is what happens in the neck. Okay, so here you have the first process, that is the airstream process in the neck, in the vocal cords. The vocal cords will allow you to phonate. That is the phonation process. And then there are two pathways to go. One is either the oral or the nasal. That will be the oronasal process. Okay, where the air goes through either the oral cavity or the nasal cavity. And the last one is the articulatory process. Now, in articulatory process, you have the articulators. What are the articulators? The structures which can move. You have the lips, you have the teeth, you have the tongue. These are the articulators. You also have the palate, all right? That is the velum, that is the soft palate. Now, all these articulators, when they move, they produce certain sound. They help in production of certain sound. If the tongue touches the tip of the teeth, it is a different sound. If it touches the top of the oral cavity, that is the palate, it is a different sound. Okay. If the teeth touch the lips, it is a different sound. So these are articulatory. All right. So you have the articulatory process, which is amongst all of them. So remember the four processes of speech. One is the airstream process. All right. Airstream process, where does it begin? It begins way down in the thoracic cavity near the lungs, where the air is pushed upwards. When it is pushed upwards, it reaches where does it reach? It reaches the neck, that is the larynx. Okay, that is where you have the vocal cords, where you have the phonation process. The production of sound takes place there, and then this sound will travel through, where it will go through either oral cavity or the nasal cavity, so that where we have the oronasal process. And finally there is the articulatory process, where you make use of the articulators and you have the production of sound. All right, so those were the four processes of speech mechanism. Okay, all right. So next, moving on to the articulatory phonetics. Now, articulatory phonetics is basically, we do it for two aspects. There are we know in terms of language, we have in terms of letters, we have the consonants and we have the vowels. Okay. Now, articulatory phonetics, when it comes to consonants, let's start with the consonants first. Okay. By the way, any doubts still here? I know there was a little anatomy heavy. No? Okay. All right. So let's move on to consonants. So now when we have to study consonants, there are three features of it. One is either voiced or voiceless sounds. Okay. And the other is POA. That is place of articulation Okay, and then there is MOA, that is the manner of articulation. Okay, let's start with voiced and voiceless distinction of sounds. Okay, now what do you understand by voiced and voiceless? Can there be a voiced and voice without voice? Can there be a sound? Yes, no? I know it's a little confusing because we think that, you know, voice is sound and why can't it be? So when we talk about voice, even in terms of anatomy, you know, okay, before going into anatomy, when we have a very severe sore throat or, you know, when we have a very bad cold, we say, oh my God, I've lost my voice, right? But there will be some sound still coming out, right? Yes? You can still speak. Yeah, but you would have lost your voice. It might be hoarse, okay, it might be crackled, but there's still voice. But we still say I've lost my voice, you know. That is because the concept of voiced and voiceless depends on this very unique feature, unique structure called as the vocal cords. Okay, so what happens is, if I look at the vocal cords from above, that is, if I look at it from the top, if I go up here, if I see it from the top here, how do the vocal cords look? This is the front of the neck. Okay, this is the, not neck, I'll say the front. Okay, and then the vocal cords are actually attached like this. Okay, and they're attached to two small bones. Don't worry, we'll not worry about the bone names, name of the bones now. Okay, so this is the, sorry, this is supposed to be the other way around. Okay. Okay, all right. So you have the front of the neck. This is this part here you have is the neck. Okay, and this red structure here that you see are the vocal cords. Okay, these are the vocal cords. Okay, so now what happens is, what is the status of the vocal cord? Sorry, what is the status of the vocal cords here? They are apart, far apart. Okay, basically the space is wide open. Okay, so if air is passing, is there any interruption for the air?
No.
If the air has to pass from below here, from the trachea through the vocal cords, through the larynx, if the vocal cords are wide open like this, will there be any interruption?
No.
No. So air passes uninterrupted. Okay. So now when it passes uninterrupted, what happens is the air just comes out smoothly. Okay. And there is no vibration. There is no work of the vocal cords here. So that is why we also call this as, in anatomy, even we call this as vibrationless or sound devoid of vibration. Okay, or voice devoid of vibration, because there is, usually we say the vocal cords vibrate to produce certain sounds, and there is nothing happening here. The vocal cords are just open. That's it. All right. So sounds such as, sorry, ka, fa, ta. Now these things, they are basically voiceless. All right. Some even call it as unvoiced. That is also fair enough. Okay. Now, if I take the other one, for example, in voiced, what happens is the vocal cords will remain closed like this. And you have two cartilages attached over here. Okay. Now, in this case, what is happening? The vocal cords are they far apart? No, they are close. Okay. And the space is narrow or completely closed. Okay. And what happens to the air? the air will, if it has to come out, it has to push, air pushes through the, air pushes through the vocal cords. Now, when the air pushes through the vocal cords, it produces a vibration effect. Can we feel this vibration effect? Yes, 100%. When we say ga, va, the, z. Okay. Now, a very simple experiment. I want all of you to either hold your ear. Okay. I want you all to hold either your ear here, where you put your earphones. We have a small ear projection. We call that as the tragus. Okay. Just press your tragus. Or if you're not comfortable with that, place your index finger, and just your index finger will do, just above the area where the Adam's apple would be. For the guys, of course, it's very easier to point because you have the Adam's apple. For the girls, yes, we don't have an Adam's apple, but we do have a slight projection that we can feel our larynxes. Okay, just place it just above. Okay, like, can you see where I've placed my finger? Yes? I can't hear. Yes, okay. If that's an inconvenient, either one of them. Either you press your ear, okay, where we put our earphones, just press that area. And that basically, you're basically closing your ears, okay? And the other one is either you can put it on your throat, okay? Now, when you put, after you keep your fingers here, try to say these sounds out loud. Ka, fa, ta. Okay, and now try to say the sound z, g, v. Okay, so when you say the second set of sounds, that is g, v, the, z, okay, there is a sense of vibration that you will feel. Okay, it will be kind of reverberating. But whereas when you say ka, fa, ta, there is no reverberation. All right, so there are no vibrations. That is how we distinguish voiceless and voiced sounds. Okay, voiced sounds carry vibration. Voiceless do not carry vibration. They are both sounds. All right, but the only difference is that they carry vibration and the other one doesn't carry vibration. Okay, if you are not able to distinguish, you know how to do it. You can go to your room, and because of course, sometimes what happens is you have others also making the same sound. It's a little difficult to distinguish at the first go. Okay, when you go back, when you are by yourself, just keep your fingers up your throat and then say out these sounds out loud, and you will realize that there is a clear vibration when it comes to the voiced sounds. Yeah. Okay, so that is about the voiced sounds. Next, moving on to we'll do the place of articulation. Now, what do we mean by this place of articulation? Place of articulation is nothing but, we go back to the same diagram. I'll just quickly draw this diagram, but this time a little smaller so that I can accommodate everything here. Basically, we are going to talk about where all articulation happens. Okay, is it clear? Are you able to make out what is what here? Okay, we have the teeth. Okay, all right. So now starting firstly, we have the bilabial. Remember, it just means place of articulation. That means what is the site where articulation takes place. Okay, now you know that the air comes out of the lungs and passes through the vocal tract. Okay, when it comes out of the lungs, it is the process. Which process of speech is it? It is the airstream process, the airflow process. And then it reaches the vocal cords where it is phonation. And then you have the oronasal. When the air reaches, after phonation, the sound reaches either the oral or the nasal cavity. Once it reaches the oral or nasal cavity is when articulation takes place. So now for this articulation to take place, you will have different factors acting together. In the first one, you have the bilabial. Okay, that is the labia. Labia means lips. Okay, so you have the bilabial articulation taking place. Okay, can you tell me which sound is produced using both the lips? Very good. Pa, ma, ba. Okay, all of these. Okay, it will be the bilabial. Like example, when we are saying pin, bin, etc. Okay, that is pa, ba, where you press both of your lips. Okay, now the second one is the a little behind labiodental. Okay, labio means again lips, dental refers to teeth. Okay, now is there anything where you bring your teeth and the lips together? Very good. Fin. Okay, let's take for example the fin. Okay, where when you say fin, faith, farmer, fa, the fa term. All right, so what happens is you have the what is coming together? What is coming together? The lips and teeth. Can you tell me which lip and which teeth? We have upper teeth, lower teeth, upper lip, lower lip.
Lower lip and upper teeth.
Very good. The upper jaw teeth, okay, that is the incisors, that is the front teeth come in contact with the lips. Okay, so you have the second one coming over here. Okay, now that is the labiodental. And now the third one is dental. Some you can even some books even in anatomy we don't usually say dental, we call it as dentine sounds. Okay, but it's okay, both are the same. Okay, now dental is basically where you use the teeth to produce. The teeth is the primary structure to produce this sound. Okay, that is the very good. Okay, like we say theta, it is, let's say thin, th. Okay, but one thing you have to remember here is it is not just dental, but it is also the tongue, the lingua. Okay, but then we'll just refer it to as dental for now here. Okay, so we have the third one here. Okay, next is coming to the fourth one. We have the alveolar. We come across this term again. You remember the alveolar ridge I pointed out to you earlier here? Yeah, it is just above the teeth. Okay, it is part of the palate, but very close to the teeth. It's not really completely a part of the palate. It's like between the palate and the teeth. That is the alveolar ridge. Okay, so you have the alveolar over there, and this is a little behind the teeth. Okay, now we need to distinguish the sounds over here a little. Okay, this is t. Okay, t, that is tin, tin. When we say tin, okay, I want you to first say thin, that is thin, thick, thin, and I want you to say tin. Okay, and concentrate where your tongue is touching. When you say thin, your tongue is touching the upper teeth, that is the incisors. When you say thin, your tongue is not touching the teeth, but a small area behind the teeth. Okay, just try doing that for a couple of seconds. Thin, tin, thin, tin. Just keep saying that and identify where your tongue is touching. Yeah, are you able to distinguish the two? Yes. Okay, I hope you can. Yeah, otherwise you'll have to do it by yourself again later, because it is possible, but maybe for the first time it might be a little difficult. Okay, then you have the palatal. Okay, now palatal is basically referring to the palate here. Okay, you have the palate here. Okay, now what will be the sound here? I can say ja. Okay, ja. Your entire tongue touches the palate. Ja. Okay, Yeah, ja. When you say judge, right? Ja, ja. The tongue is touching the palate. Okay. So it is the, for example, when we say judge or jug or anything with the word ja. Okay. Next we have, okay, this will be the fifth one over here for the palate. Okay. Next we have, sorry, velar. You remember I told you there is a small part behind over here. We call it as the velum. That is the soft palate. All right. That is what we call as the velar. Okay. And now that is where you find the sound of k. Okay. When we say, you need to differentiate now here between tin, which was just behind the teeth. Okay. Then you have that tin is here, that is just behind the teeth. And then judge, which is on the palate. And then you have kite, which is way behind here, out here, way back here. That is the sixth one, that is k. Okay. All right. So that is the velar. And then you have the seventh one. Okay. This is very interesting. This is the glottal. Now this is something we cannot realize because this is a part we cannot sense very clearly, which is like sounds like g. Okay. Like goat. Here, let's say it is kite. I'm just giving you an example. Goat. Okay. Goat, gun. Okay. Gum, g, g. G is also, remember, it is a voiced sound. Okay. It is a voiced sound. So it is g. Okay. So that is coming way below in the glottis. It is easier to remember this because it is glottal G. It's easier to remember that way. Okay. And the last one will be the retroflex. Okay. Now retroflex is a little strange because it is actually done by the tongue. Okay. And in this, the tip of the tongue is supposed to curl upwards and touches the top of your palate. Like for example, when you say room, r, when you are you able to hear the sound r, room, raisins, r? When it is very unique to this particular sound, that is r. You have to, if you notice, the tip of your tongue touches the top of your palate. Okay. So we had glottal, that is near the glottis. Here is the glottal. Okay. So here you have the glottal, and then you have the retroflex, where this touches the upper part. That is almost, it touches the alveolar ridge or a slightly behind the alveolar ridge, and you have the r sound. Okay. Like room, raisins, okay, etc. Okay. Is it clear till here, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So these are your places of articulation. Now the sound, I mean, you have the air which has passed through the larynx and there is sound. The sound is actually traveling through the oral and nasal areas. And when it is traveling to oral and nasal areas, it comes across these places of articulation. Depending on where that sound, that pocket of air hits, which part it hits, and where what it is modified by is dependent on these 8 places. Okay. There is also one more thing you could remember. There is the alveolar. I mean, Srini, do they do post-alveolar sounds also? Srini? Do they can, I mean, will they come across post-alveolar sounds? I mean, I know they will come across like sh and all of that. But okay, I'll just mention it. There is something called as, you have alveolar. There is also something called as post-alveolar. Okay. Now, post-alveolar is for sa, sh, okay, s, sa, okay. I'll put it in this terms itself. It's easier. Okay. These sounds will be post-alveolar. You have the alveolar ridge and a little behind. You cannot call them really palatal. You cannot really call them as alveolar. So they just give it a name called as post-alveolar. It's a little difficult to distinguish, but if you concentrate and do it, you can find out at one point. Yeah. All right. So now let's move on to the manner of articulation.
Anitha,
Huh?
you may also discuss about the difference between the hard palate and the soft palate. Like which one is considered as hard palate and which one is considered soft.
Yeah. So basically, okay, yeah. Did you guys get a mirror? I think Srini had told to get a mirror. Did he? No?
No, I asked you yesterday.
Oh, okay. You asked me yesterday. Okay. I thought you told me that you're going. That's okay. You all have your phones and you all have the front camera with high resolution front cameras. So what I want you to do is, it's very easy to understand the palate, because it's very important also to understand what the palate is like, because you have so many sounds that come up there. Okay, so you have basically the alveolar ridge, that is, you have the alveolar sound, then you have the palatal sound, then you have the velar sound, and glottal, of course, is not exactly the palate, a little below. Okay, so now when you can all switch on your phones and see through. I want you all to see your own oral cavity, or you can see the oral cavity of the person sitting next to you if you don't mind, but that might be a little embarrassing, so I'm just letting you see your own. Okay, so when you look at your oral cavity, okay, so take the tip of your tongue and start touching the teeth first. With the tip of your tongue, touch your teeth. Okay, you know which is the teeth, you can see clearly. Now go behind the teeth, you can feel something hard, right? So whatever extent the tip of the tongue can touch, it is all hard palate. Unless someone has an extra long tongue and they can touch the soft palate, but please don't do that, because if you end up touching your soft palate, you will choke. So we don't want anyone choking in class right now. Yeah. Okay. So whatever your tip of the tongue can touch at the top is all hard palate. You can see that it is all like, there is like, kind of a smooth layer. We call it as the mucous membrane, and there are some ridges also there, but don't worry about that. But now what I want you to see is, stick your tongue out and try to see at the back of your oral cavity. Okay, stick your tongue out and at the back of your oral cavity, you will see a small projection downwards. Anatomically, we call it as uvula. Okay, don't look at each other. Okay, you can just, okay, I think I lost connection again. Did I lose you guys? No, okay, nice, are still here. All right. So you just have to, I know I look weird being projected on the screen with my tongue sticking out. So when you stick your tongue out, just look at the back of your oral cavity. There will be like a small projection hanging downwards. Okay. And that is the uvula. Okay. Now, uvula does not have any much role in terms of speech, but what has a role is the part in front of the uvula, what we call as the velum. That is where we have the velar sound. Now, when we talk about velar sound, please remember, it does not mean that the tongue is touching that part. No. If the tongue touches that part, we are choking. As simple as that. Tongue cannot touch that part. Okay. It is basically the sound hits that area. All right. The sound is hitting this particular area. Okay. So that is why we call it as the velar part. Okay. So you have the hard palate, which you can feel with your tongue. And then behind that, you have the soft palate. You can't feel it with your tongue, but you can see it. Okay. Some people have extra long tongues and they can feel it, but then if you end up feeling it, then it is definitely one person is going to choke there. Okay. And let's not have that here. Is that clear about the palate now? Yeah. Okay. Now, it might not be possible here today in the classroom, but when you go back, okay, stand in front of a mirror. I'm sure you all have a mirror. If you don't have it in your room, you have big mirrors in the department toilets. So you can stand in front of the mirror, yeah, and stick your tongue as much out as possible. And you can see a part of the epiglottis also. The part which here, that is, I'll just point it out here. this tip of the epiglottis can also be seen. Okay, that is where you have, when the sound hits that area, that is the glottal sounds. And typically, what is the sound that we get from the glottal? That is the G, ga. Okay, although we say G, letter G, but the sound that comes out is ga. Okay, and please remember, this is a vibration sound. That is a voiced sound. Okay, I'm not used to the terminology a little because we only call it as vibration sound and vibration-less sound. But in linguistics, it's called voiced and voiceless. So anyway, is that clear for everyone now?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, perfect. Do you guys need a break? Yes? Please feel free. Yeah? So shall we take a break for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have, I think, about half an hour more of class to do. So we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll come back at 6 o'clock. Oh, no, not 6. What time, Srini? Sorry.
Sorry, Denmark.
Okay. So, all right. We'll come back in 5 minutes. Thanks.
Hi, Anitha, can you hear us?
Yeah, we'll continue.
Can you say something now?
Yeah, shall we continue?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it echoing?
Yeah.
Now?
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah. All right. So welcome back. Okay. Okay. So welcome back. So we just left with just two more aspects of this class. One is manner of articulation and how we have been doing the consonants till now, and we'll deal with the vowels, which is a very short thing. So when it comes to manner of articulation, now when we did the place of articulation, it was the site in the vocal tract, a particular place, whether it is the tongue or whether it is the teeth or the palate or the lips. Okay. So when we talk about manner of articulation, there are certain consonants that the sound is produced. We classify them based on how they are pronounced. All right. How the airflow takes place when this particular sound of a consonant comes out. Okay. Now there is something. There are 6 different types. Of course, there are many more types, but I'll only be discussing the 6 main ones. Okay, which are more anatomically relevant. We'll be doing more about them in phonology, if I'm not wrong. Okay, but as of now, we'll just deal with the basic ones. The first one is the stop consonants. Okay, now stop consonants is basically the mechanism is blocking of the airflow. Okay, so what happens here is the airflow is blocked. That is, the person is you're breathing out, and the airflow is blocked. It is stopped. When airflow is blocked, what happens? There is buildup of pressure. Okay, and then there is the air is let go of abruptly. Okay, now what sounds come out of this? So, sounds like p, t, k. Okay, b, the, g. Okay, now you build up. There is a pressure that is there. Now, there are 2 different categories in most of these consonant sounds in the way it is, that is again based on voiceless and voiced. This is the reason we did voiceless and voiced first, because even when we talk about place of articulation, you can distinguish them into voiceless and voiced, whereas even in manner of articulation, you can distinguish them as voiceless and voiced. So out of the stop consonants, the voiceless ones will be p, t, and k. Okay, for example, when I say pet, okay, wherever there is emphasis, pet, pet, okay, and then there is talk. I don't lay emphasis on la, right? I lay emphasis on the t and the k. Okay, so that is the stop consonants. These are called as stop consonants. Amongst the voiced, we have b, the, and g. So you have be, begged. Wherever there is emphasis on whichever consonant, then you have the consonant of dog. Okay, there is again emphasis there. Okay, so that is about the stop consonants. Next, we have the fricatives. Okay, now fricatives, one is it's easy. Fricatives, you have F, of course, and then you have theta, then you have sa, then you have sha, and then you have ha as voiceless. Now, what happens in fricatives is it is very similar to stop consonants, but it is not a complete block of airflow. It is partial block of airflow. Okay, now after this partial block, what happens is the air is allowed to escape through a very narrow gap. What do I mean by this narrow gap? see, whenever we talk about, even in the previous one, here also when we talked about block airflow, we are talking about blocking the airflow below the vocal cords, below this level. We have the vocal cords here below this level. So the vocal cords will close shut. Okay, so the vocal cords will be closed shut. So when it is closed shut and then there is air still coming up, there is a lot of pressure build up. And when there is a sudden pressure build up and it opens up suddenly, abruptly it opens and the air comes out. Whereas in the case of fricatives, what happens is it is not complete closure like this. Let's say these are the two vocal cords here, vocal folds. Okay, it's not complete closure. It will be slightly open, very narrow gap. Okay, so if we have to go up here, so it is something like this. Here it is completely closed. So if it is probably for the fricatives, it will be a narrow gap opening like this. Okay, so it will be such a narrow gap and then the air is allowed to pass through. And that is when we have these voiceless sounds. Yeah, that is the fa, ta, sa, sha, ha. So for example, if I say, let's say faith, I have faith, fa, and th, faith. Okay, and then I can say house, ha, and sa. Okay, and then she. I'm not pronouncing her here, but I'm pronouncing it as together, sha. Okay, so these are the voiceless fricative consonants. Now, what are the voiced fricative consonants here? We have va, okay, and then we have za, okay, and then we have ja, sorry, va, za, the, va, the, and then we have za, and then we have ja. Okay, sorry, keep getting confused between the two. Okay, so we have vase, we don't say vase, we say vase, va, and za. Okay, and then you have the word the itself, indicative of the, and then you have rouge, ja. Okay, so you have va, za, the, ja. Okay, now always remember, when you please do tell out these words, okay, and whatever I'm underlining, pay attention when you pronounce these things. Okay, for example, if I'm saying bed, okay, pay attention to those particular consonants and you see that it will be voiced consonants. Okay, so please make sure that you pay attention to it when you're saying out loud, and you please feel free even now to say it out loud. Yeah, okay, next coming to the, that was the fricatives, and then you have the affricates. And in affricates, basically you have the ch, that is, for example, oops, sorry, you have the word cheap. Okay, although English spellings and pronunciations don't match. I think you all know that already, right? It's always good to know the phonemics. I'm also learning phonemics right now because I'm learning Danish here, and Danish is worse than English. Believe me, English is a far better, they say English is a stupid language, but I don't know what to call Danish, because if without phonemics, you cannot learn a language like Danish, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm doing that. So phonemics will always help. So coming back, so you have the words like cheap, rich, ch. Okay, now these will be voiceless. And how do these, how are these things made up? What is the manner in which they are made up? So there is air buildup here also. Okay, but again, here what happens is there is a difference in the fricatives and affricates. There is a partial block, and here there is a complete block. And after a complete block, instead of an abrupt release like in the stop consonants, here it is released in a narrow channel. Sorry. It is actually a combination of the stop and the fricative consonants. The air buildup is like that for the stop consonant, but the release is like that of the fricatives. Okay, remember stop consonants is complete build-up, complete blockage, complete build-up, abrupt release, hut. Okay, but fricatives is partial block of airflow and gradual release of, that is, air is allowed to escape slowly. In fricatives, there is still air build-up, but the release is not abrupt like in that of stop consonants. It's through a narrow channel. Okay, now fricatives, what are the voiced ones? You have z. Okay, so you have, let's say, j, that's not z, sorry, j, that is jeep. And any other examples of this? You have judge, you have rage, j, and judge. Okay, so j, j. Okay, so that will be the affricates. Any doubts still here? Anyone? No? Okay. The next few are quite easy and you're all familiar with them already, and none of them have voiceless. Next is the nasal. You have m, ma, na. Okay. When you say morning, ma. Okay. Name. Okay. Now these are the nasals. It's nothing but airflow through nose. No rocket science over there, thankfully. Okay, so that is one thing. And no voiceless ones. Remember, nasal, if there is always vibration, there is always vibration, so they are all voiced sounds. Then you have what we call as the liquid consonants. The liquid consonants, again, easy to remember, l and r. Okay, now basically liquid consonants is where you have the tongue curling up. Tongue curls up, and what happens after that? You have the air escapes through the sides. Okay, you have the air escaping through the sides, that is l and r. Let's say load, l. You have the tongue is the main factor, acting factor over here. Okay, road, r. Remember, I mentioned it in the earlier also, the post-alveolar where you had r. Okay, the post-alveolar in the place of articulation, that is r, road, right, raisins. Anywhere you find the term, the sound of r, you will have the liquid. It's also called as the liquid consonant. Okay, coming lastly, you have the glides. Now, glides is something, it's not anatomically distinguishable for me specifically, but it is part of the phonetics, and that's why I'm mentioning it here. You will read more, probably read more about this in phonology. Okay, so you have v and j. Okay, now you will have to remember to actually, yeah, this, oops, sorry. You'll have to remember to distinguish j from j. Okay, now here one more thing you have to remember here is, when I say j here, it is not the English alphabet j, but it is the yot or the y, ya sound. Okay, so when we have to, let's say, for example, for w, that is v, we say v. Okay, and for j, it is actually the sound ya, that is yes. Okay, although I'm writing j here, please remember these are the phonemic chart letters that I'm using in this particular chart. Okay, so that is why it is ya. It is not the same as the j here. Okay, the j in the judge, that is what I've used in the affricates over there. Okay, so in this one, what is happening is the tongue is moving to or from the vowel. Okay, it's a little difficult to distinguish this because the tongue shifts between from the vowel to the consonant or consonant to the vowel. So now we have v. Okay, v, when you have v, when you're pronouncing v, the tongue is actually shifting as you're pronouncing the consonant. Typically what happens is only one action is involved when you're pronouncing a vowel. Okay, but in this case, especially in the glides, that is v and y, It is basically the tongue moves. That's why sometimes even ear, whenever we say ear and all of that, we generally tend to use we use indefinite article as a or an, right? So an is only when you have a letter starting with a word starting with a vowel. But that is the reason why here in this case, it can be related to this aspect also, where you have ear is very close to the vowel. So it sounds like the vowel itself. And that's the reason in terms of using an indefinite article, that is a or an, we generally tend to use and for letters, words starting with Y. Okay, so that was about the manner of articulation. Now coming lastly to vowels. Now vowels are, I'll keep it very short. Now the difference between vowels and consonants is that consonants need articulation. There is obstructed airflow, but whereas in terms of vowels, there is no obstruction of the airflow. The sound is produced through what we call as an open vocal tract. Okay, the sound produced with an open vocal tract. That will be a vowel. Okay, just try to say out A, E, I, O, U. Okay, the tongue is moving. When you say A, E, I, O, U, the tongue is moving, the lips are moving, the teeth are also moving, but they do not touch each other. Okay, so we can say the tongue does not touch the lips, teeth, or palate. Okay, why don't you all just try it once? Can you feel that you have to feel the tongue move? When you say A, E, I, O, U, the lips, tongue, everything is moving, but none of them are touching each other. And that is why we say that it is a open vocal tract. But that is not the case for consonants. And another very important feature here is that there will be no build-up of pressure to pronounce, to tell out these words. Okay, is that clear, everyone? Okay, I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay, so now when it comes to vowels, there are there are multiple characteristics that we can take into consideration. One we call as the placement of the vowel, whether we tell it up front or in the anterior part of the oral cavity, middle of the oral cavity, or at the back of the oral cavity, or are we taking it higher, middle, or lower? Okay, and are we telling it longer? Is it a tensed vowel or is it a laxed or a relaxed vowel? Are we telling it for a longer time? For example, let's take the two terms bead. Okay, and bid. Now, when we say bead, E, it's a little longer one. So we call it as a tense vowel. Bid, it is short, right? So it will be a laxed vowel. Okay, so I'll just let this be. Okay, so based on these characteristics, we can distinguish different types of vowels. I'll just draw a quick table. Okay, so when we talk about high, mid, or low, we need to see the shape of our lips. Okay, now let's say we are pronouncing these in the front of the oral cavity. Okay, so when we talk about, let's say, E, okay, please, E is different from E. Okay, so here you have bead, E, okay, and then you have bid, and then you have myth, Okay. Now E, 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 E. Are you able to distinguish the sound? Okay. You have in bead. It is a tensed vowel. You're prolonging it. Bead, key, bid, myth, E, E. Okay. So when you tell out these words and concentrate, what is the shape of your lips when you are pronouncing these vowels? Keep that in mind. We'll compare it to the next one. Okay. Next one is A. You have bed, dead. Okay. Now, first one was E. Next one was, sorry, first one was E. The next one was E. The next is in the mid-level, you have A, bed, dead. And then to coming to the lower level, you have the A, that is bad or rap, A. Okay. Now try to concentrate as to the shape of your lips. Okay. So we'll move to the next one and do all of it together. Okay. Now coming to the central part, we don't have a high or a low. We just have the mid pronunciations, that is A, like in above or oven. Okay. Or we have O, like in what or dove. Okay. Sorry, done. Not dove, sorry, done. Okay. And then coming to the back vowels, that is the back pronunciation. Once you have, sorry, U, move, you, okay, or U, book, put, U, all right. And then in the mid level at the back, you have the shorter ones, that is the born, or, okay. And then in the lower ones, you have a little more complicated one, which is always, you don't know why English has such spellings, bob, or, caught. Okay. Now, when we have to do these things, you have to identify, you have to see in what way your lips are moving. Okay. Let's see the high ones first. Okay. Now, E, bid, bead, E, E. Okay. Now it is E. You go to the mid level, it becomes A. Your mouth opens up a little more. And you go down a little more, A, bad, rap, A. You know, your mouth opens up a little more. Okay. So that is how you differentiate high, mid, and low pronunciations. Okay. Now these are happening in the front. And of course, central, you cannot make out much of a difference because we don't have much of a comparison as such. And then at the back one, you have the move, oo, oo, o, born, o, bob, o. You know, like your lips become bigger and bigger. So basically, actually not bigger, sorry, it opens up wider and wider. So when you're at a high level pronunciation, your lips are more pursed together, that is close together. As you go lower with the vowels, they become wide open. Okay. So that is how you will remember. I think this is in terms of anatomy, in terms of structure of the mouth, that is what I can tell you. But I think in more in detail, in terms of how they go together, you will be doing it in phonology. And one more aspect of vowels is vowels never occur, need not never, it need not always occur in a singular way. Okay. You can have two vowels together. What are they called as? They are called as diphthongs. Okay. Even diphthongs is something even I'm very new to. I've not learned diphthongs as a word structure or letter structure when I was studying English, but it was something I was introduced to much later. All right. And it is something that is often ignored in schools and things, and it's such a pity because diphthongs are basically diphthongs. Dip means two. Okay. So you have two vowels combining together to give us one sound. For example, let's say I. Okay. Now by, I. Okay. It's not just it is I. By, I. The sound that emerges here is I. that is that of the vowel again. Okay, then let's say A. You have bait, and what else? You have 8. Okay, don't worry about the spellings, but you try to concentrate on the sound of the vowel. Here you have a combination: by, I, bait, 8. Okay, so now these are basically diphthongs. So always remember, diphthongs are nothing but sounds made by combining two vowels. And one unique thing here is, why do we call them as diphthongs? Why we have two vowels together? If we see the structure, that is the tongue, which is going to pronounce, to help us pronounce these vowels, the tongue moves from one area to the other. When I say by, I, concentrate how your tongue moves. When I say 8, don't worry about E or don't worry about the ta in the end. A. Okay, when I say A, my tongue actually goes downwards and then comes upwards. Okay, so that is the combination of the movement of the tongue that allows us to put two vowels together, call them as diphthongs. Okay, so basically diphthongs is nothing but sound made by combining two vowels. Okay, so and remember what happens is the tongue moves in this between vowels. The tongue moves, that's why we say that there are two vowels. Okay, so with that we come to the end of consonants and vowels and the phonetics related to them, and how it works in terms of anatomy, like where it goes, where the structures go, and how they go about it. I think I'm just left with 1 minute. I was hoping I'll be left with more time, but I'm not sure. I always end up going over time. So we can still take questions if it is permitted. Of course, Srini can take a call if anyone has any doubts, or if you want to ask me anything, something, more than happy to answer.
Yeah, we can open the floor for questions as well. And if you have something that you would like to cover briefly, like for example, auditory part or lateralization of brain, if you want to cover a bit, maybe we can extend it.
No, I think what I've mentioned that here in the beginning itself, that is the auditory area and the speech area.
Okay.
I think they can take it from there, and if you want, I can take another class itself, because it's quite in detail in terms of how words and things are processed, and like how the processing happens in the brain. It's a little more. I'm not sure in what depth I need to go for them, so I don't want to end up using complex words and over what we have already done today. Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure they're exhausted. It's a 2-hour class, man. Come on.
Yeah, there is Natasha and she has a question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Natasha.
Hi, Natasha.
My question is, to what extent are the vocal cords trained during childhood and are not able to change later? So, for example, in some cultures, they're not able to say certain.
Hello. I think I'm losing the
sounds after,
I could not get the question. The audio was breaking a lot. Sorry.
My question is, to what extent are the vocal cords kind of blocked after childhood? Because in some cultures, they're not able to pronounce certain sounds in adulthood. So for example, like in Japanese culture, they can't say R, or they can't say L, but they'll say like R. And is it possible to train the vocal cords in adulthood for those type of sounds that might not have been in your culture?
Yes. So what happens is, when we talk about vocal cords, let's say, for example, I'll just show it here itself in one of these examples. Or no, I'll draw it separately. So let's say you have, oops. you have these vocal cords here, right? Okay, so now this thick lining here, we call this as the cord. Okay, now this entire area here, there is a covering called as the fold. We call this as the vocal fold. Okay, now within this vocal fold, there are really tiny muscles, like, like really small muscles. Okay, and then there are there are muscles that are attached here to this cartilage. We call them as arytenoid cartilage, but don't worry about it. There are muscles that go around here like this. Now these are really, really fine, very small, sophisticated muscles. Okay, so when, let's say, for example, and always remember what I told you, speech happens with auditory stimulus. All right. Now, when a child, when a baby starts talking, when it starts making noise, it's basically aping. It is just trying to produce the sound it is hearing. Okay. So what happens is, let's take, for example, Indian languages. Let's take, for example, Kannada itself, or I know what is your mother tongue? What is your native tongue?
Russian.
Russian. Okay. So when you hear Russian words from the time that, let's say, for example, 6 months, auditory areas are active from the time of 4 months onwards for speech, in terms of speech. Of course, sound perception is there from the day you are born, but in terms of speech recognition, it starts around 4 months. Our auditory areas develop there. So once they start identifying or taking these sounds, what happens is they start firing out signals to these particular muscles to produce that sound. Okay. So what happens is, it is just like gym training, like you train that muscle in this particular way to develop. All right. So that muscle will be able, that combination of movements exists only for that particular sounds. Okay. So what happens is, let's say, for example, as a Russian, if you come and will you be able to speak fluent Kannada immediately? No, not possible. Will I be able to speak fluently Russian even if I learn Russian completely? No, it will take me many, many, many years. Why will it take me many years? Because I have to condition those muscles. I have to recondition those muscles. But if I recondition those muscles, it is possible. But there is also the age factor that we will have to consider. That is why they say that young children, adolescents, they can pick up languages much faster than older people. It is not in terms of just grasping power. It is also anatomically, the muscles are not fully tamed to a particular language or a particular sound. They can still be reconditioned. But whereas as we grow older, the reconditioned capacity of the muscles will reduce. So that is why we'll not be able to do that. It's as simple as you keep doing it from a very young age, you can continue to do it. But you don't do it, let's say, for example, I speak only Kannada for 25 years or 30 years. I don't speak any other language. It will be very difficult for me to recondition myself to learn. Even if I learn Russian, I might never get the pronunciations right. Yeah. So it's all about reconditioning, and age is an important factor over there. Yeah. Otherwise, it is possible. Yep. Can.
What is the process to recondition? What is the process to recondition?
Practice.
Do you have to just keep trying to make same sound?
Yes, keep speaking. There are certain, like for example, exercises. Now, for example, I'm learning Danish. Okay, and in Danish, there are so many places where we have to roll our tongue and put it downwards, like put it like say like there is something called as hell. We pronounce it as, we write it as D, but we pronounce it as l. Okay, it is very similar to the Malayalam l, but it's a little different. Like for example, there is this joke that runs here that anyone who can pronounce wrong on the floor, it's a sweet dish. It is so difficult to pronounce. Of course, I did not pronounce it right. Okay, then we have learned Danish, and it takes 4 to 5 years to just get that word right. So it's basically, we need to keep practicing, keep speaking. With any language, the more you speak, the more you will learn. One is, it's not just we are training the brain. Just remember, it is also our vocal muscles. Okay, so it's a very valid question that you asked. I mean, it's not just the brain that we have to learn it, but we have to also physically work on our vocal cords, vocal folds, like I mentioned, because the vocal folds contain the muscles that control these vocal cords. We recondition them and we get them to work in more than the combinations that they are used to till now. Then it is possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
How are the accents related? Like different accents from different region of people. How is that related to the vocal tract?
How? I didn't get you.
The accents.
Accent. She's speaking about
Accents. See, accents is it's the same thing again. See, because let's say I am used to speaking in a particular language, I am used to pronouncing certain things in a particular way, and my vocal tract can channelize air in a particular way. All right, because that is what I've heard all along, and that is the pronunciation I can come up with. So that is how. That's why if you see, let's say for example, if a person lives in a place long enough, they end up losing an accent. Like, you know, they will not speak in their native first language accent. All right. Typically, most of us end up having the first language accent on other languages that we speak. But if you spend enough time in the company of people speaking, hearing, writing, reading that particular language in the way the natives speak, then you lose that accent. It is again the concept of reconditioning. It is just practice. Because our airflow tract, I mean, our vocal tract, our muscles are conditioned to function in a particular combination. And when there is a new combination that is introduced, it is possible, but it takes time to adapt to it. That's all. I hope that answered the question. I don't know.
Anshula, do you have any question?
Is there someone else?
Yeah, she is online.
Anshula can type.
Okay.
Anshula, you can type if you have any question. If you don't have, you can also type.
Hi Anitha, I have a question. This is Gautam.
Yes, hi Gautam.
Like while speaking about the vowels, you told that open add tract, right? But like, what about like, for example, in Sanskrit, the r considered as a vowel, but like there the tongue touches the palate, right?
Palate, yeah, that's an exception.
Yeah,
it is an exception. Basically, what happens is, one thing we can consider here is, even in r, what happens is, the vocal cord area, that part is open. There is no constriction there. All right. But one more thing over there is, it's actually a vibration tone. It's a vibration sound. All right. But still, it will be open, and it is a vibration sound. R is an exception actually. In some languages, like for example, even in Danish, they have it's very similar. It is we draw. I mean, we have stopped sharing the screen. You just draw an O and put a line across. That is the that is there in all the Scandinavian languages. So even that one, again, you have the tongue touching it. It actually rolls, and then it touches the palate. But that's an exception. Yeah. But I think in anatomy, when we study about vowels and consonants, it's all unfortunately more concentrated on Latin vowels and this thing. So according to that, in anatomy, what we do in terms of vocal tract and the sounds produced and all of that is mainly with reference to Latin. So yeah.
Because like even while explaining that nasal sound and all, like when it comes to Kannada or Sanskrit in other Indian languages,
we have much more, yeah, like nya and all that. We don't talk about it at all, actually. Yeah. I lost audio. I lost it.
And
Yeah.
can you repeat, you know?
Yes.
Any other questions?
I understand that there is a lot to discuss on this topic, and it is also very difficult to do it through hybrid mode. So
I know it's
thank
very
you.
difficult. Oh my God. Because unfortunately I had to either have the audio or the screen thing. But anyway, somehow at least I hope the drawings were clear enough. But this is, frankly speaking, this is the first time I'm taking an online class, because I quit my teaching job just before the pandemic. So I've not taken an online class. So you guys have been really patient, and thank you so much, all of you guys, because I was really tensed as to how I'll perform, or how you will rate me as a teacher, as an online teacher, because I hate online classes. I hate them. I absolutely hate them. I'll be very frank about that. And it's a pity that I have to take an online class. That's why I told Srini, probably I can come back and you can tell someone else to take, but then you guys needed to know this now. So yeah, but happy to take any day. Yeah.
I also can feel the difference of the drawing doing online in the board, and then the difference in the online. Thank you so much for your time. It's early morning, 4 o'clock. You woke up at 3, and then in the
No problem.
freezing Denmark, Danish winter, you woke up. I guess the temperature today is -5, -4.
It is -3, but feels like -8, and it is snowing outside.
The students are doing.
Believe me, no. Believe me, you don't want snow. I hate snow now. I used to love snow, but I hate snow now. After you fall twice on ice on the road, when everyone starts smiling and laughing, then you'll be like, no, I hate snow.
Anyhow, the sun is going to come to you after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Till then, you can.
Yeah, 8:45 is sunrise. Yeah, I have to go to class in the dark. I have to cycle in the dark and go to class at 8. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your time. And there was a lot to cover, even in articulatory phonetics, and there is a lot to cover in auditory phonetics and acoustics. And also, there were certain things that could have been covered from the point of view of neuro-linguistics. But
Yeah.
the students would be neuro-linguistics, but mostly the part that is dealt with in the book is something to do with neurolingual problem rather than the cognitive science aspect of it. So it is nice that you once again did this session for us, an online session for us, and also it's now on YouTube so that they can refer to the session later and make use of it. Of course, the way Indian languages, Indic languages, and Sanskrit, particularly the question that Gautam asked, R and L have been, even by Panini himself, have been put as a separate character in his systematization. Looking at it as a Napumsaka character, it's neither consonant nor vowel. So that is how they have been considered as an independent character rather than putting in either of these boxes. So there are a lot of interesting linguistic debates on these characters and the way the articulation, whether the place of articulation, the manner of articulation, or even the whether do we articulate them with vibration or without vibration, voice and voiceless sounds. And there are a lot of things that could be discussed. Thank you for your time, and thanks to all of the students and the students of MA Sanskrit Studies, and I guess Indian philosophy students are online, and BA Foreign Languages and Intercultural Studies students who are present here. So thanks to my friends and colleagues. Thanks to all of them for their support and making this event, an online class so interesting. So thank you once again.
You are telling it's interesting. I don't know if the students found it interesting. It's okay. I'm just kidding. That's okay. You don't have to tell me now. No worries. Thanks, Srini. Thanks, Gautam, Arjuna, Tanima, Swathi, everyone in the department, and of course, the wonderful students. You've been really patient with my class, although I gave only 5 minutes break in between. I'm sorry for that, but I hope it was not content heavy, and I hope something that you can take back. Whatever I've written down, I'll just convert it into PDF and share it with Gautam, and you can collect it from him. Gautam and Srini, send it to the department ID, and you guys can collect it from them. All right, thanks so much for having me, and yep, I think we'll call it a day. Yeah, thanks. Bye bye. Have a nice day. All. Bye bye.